I need to speak with whoever canceled my reservation. Now. The man standing in the marble lobby of the Carlton Edge Hotel was wearing pajama pants, a hastily thrown-on jacket, and the kind of expression that could freeze summer rain. At 7:15, on a Tuesday morning while most of Denver still slept, Benjamin Rowe had just walked into his own five-star hotel looking like he'd been woken from a dead sleep. And he had been. Behind the mahogany reception desk, 24-year-old Lily Bennett felt her heart hammering against her ribs. Her fingers, still trembling from 3 hours of second-guessing herself, gripped the edge of the counter. For someone who had always been the shy girl in every room she entered, facing an angry CEO felt like her worst nightmare coming true. You see, at 2:14 that morning, Lily had done something that would either save her career or destroy it. She had canceled a VIP reservation. Not just any reservation, though she didn't know it at the time, but a booking that belonged to the most powerful man in the hospitality industry. A man who now stood before her in sleepwear, demanding answers. But let me take you back to where this story really begins. Back to a quiet Tuesday night, when a young woman's careful attention to detail would either prove her worth or cost her everything she'd worked for. Lily Bennett wasn't like most 24-year-olds. While her friends were out building social media followings and chasing weekend adventures, this shy girl had found her calling in the overnight shift at one of Denver's most prestigious hotels. She preferred the solitude of night hours, the gentle hum of silence, broken only by the occasional late arrival or early departure. There was something else about Lily that set her apart. 8 years earlier, when she was just 16, her father had fallen victim to an elaborate financial scam. One seemingly legitimate email had cost their family everything: their home, their savings, and ultimately her father's life. The stress and shame had been too much for David Bennett's heart to bear. Since that devastating loss, Lily had developed what some might call an obsession with details. Every number had to add up. Every procedure had to be followed. Every instinct had to be trusted, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant. Stay with me, because Lily's about to face exactly that choice. The notification chime that changed everything sounded at exactly 2:14 a.m. Lily had been organizing the night audit reports when her computer screen lit up with an incoming VIP reservation request. At first glance, it looked routine. Wealthy guests often made last-minute bookings at the Carlton Edge. But something made her pause. The email address, jm.executive.tempmail.services, Lily frowned. In her 3 years working nights at Carlton Edge, she'd memorized the patterns. VIP bookings always came through verified channels, corporate emails, recognized travel agencies, or the hotel's premium concierge service. They never came from temporary email services. She opened the full request, guest name Jonathan M. Room, Executive Suite, 20th floor, booking code CX7429, VIP X arrival immediate. The booking code bothered her most. Lily had a peculiar gift for remembering number sequences, a skill that had served her well in her role. And CX7429 felt familiar in the wrong way. She pulled up the hotel's internal verification system, a protocol most night staff never bothered with for what appeared to be legitimate bookings. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, entering the booking code. Status: retired. Deactivated 30 days ago. Lily's blood went cold. Someone was trying to use an old canceled booking code to gain access to their most expensive suite. In her mind, she could hear her father's voice from years ago. Sweetheart, when something doesn't feel right, don't ignore that feeling. One small detail can save everything. For 15 agonizing minutes, Lily sat in the dim lobby weighing her options. She could approve the booking. After all, it was possible the system had a glitch, or someone had simply reused an old confirmation number by mistake. The guest could be completely legitimate, or she could trust her instincts. At 2:29 a.m., Lily made her choice. She canceled the reservation request and entered a note in the system, "Booking declined due to invalid confirmation code and non-standard security protocols." The hotel's standard operating procedures gave night staff the authority to reject suspicious bookings without requiring supervisor approval. Lily had never used this authority before, but tonight felt different. She printed a copy of the booking request and her response tucking it into her personal logbook, another habit she'd developed since her father's death. Then she returned to her duties, trying to shake the feeling that she'd just made either the best or worst decision of her professional life. The rest of her shift passed in unusual quiet, broken only by the soft footsteps of the custodial team and the distant hum of Denver's early morning traffic. At 5:45 a.m., just as Lily was preparing her end-of-shift reports, Chloe Turner burst through the employee entrance, looking like she'd seen a ghost. Chloe was the day shift manager, a 30-year-old woman who usually arrived with military precision at exactly 6 a.m. Today, she was early frazzled and clutching her phone like a lifeline. "Lily," Chloe's voice came out as barely more than a whisper. Did you do anything with a VIP booking last night?" "Yes," Lily replied carefully. "I declined a booking that had an invalid confirmation code." The color drained from Chloe's face so quickly that Lily thought she might faint. Chloe gripped the edge of the reception desk, her knuckles white. "What was the name on the booking?" "Jonathan M." "Why is there a problem?" Chloe closed her eyes, and when she opened them, Lily saw something that looked like panic. "Lily, Jonathan M. That's Benjamin Rowe's alias. That's how our CEO books rooms when he wants to stay incognito." The words hit Lily like a physical blow. Benjamin Rowe, the man who owned not just the Carlton Edge, but a chain of luxury hotels across the western United States. A man so notoriously particular about service standards that his surprise visits had become legendary in the industry. "But the booking code was retired," Lily stammered. "The email wasn't from a verified domain. I followed protocol." "Oh, honey," Chloe sank into a nearby chair. "You just refused a room to the man who signs our paychecks." The lobby fell silent except for the soft classical music that played constantly in the background. For a shy girl who had spent her whole life trying to avoid exactly this kind of attention, Lily felt the world tilting around her. But somewhere in the chaos of her thoughts, a small voice insisted that she had done the right thing. "Where did he sleep?" Lily asked quietly. "That's what I'm trying to figure out," Chloe replied, already dialing a number on her phone. "His assistant is looking for him now. Apparently he was supposed to arrive here around 3 a.m. for an early morning meeting with investors." The black SUV pulled up to the Carlton Edge's main entrance, with the kind of dramatic timing you only see in movies. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Lily watched a tall figure emerge from the passenger side, and her heart nearly stopped. Benjamin Rowe looked exactly like she'd imagined, distinguished, imposing, and currently wearing pajama pants, with a jacket thrown hastily over what appeared to be a sleep shirt. His expression was thunderous. The automatic doors whisked open, and suddenly the man who controlled her professional fate was striding across the marble floor toward her desk. Every employee in the lobby, the custodial team, the early arriving restaurant staff, the security guards stopped what they were doing and watched. "Who canceled my reservation?" His voice wasn't loud, but it carried the kind of authority that made the question feel like a judgment. Lily could feel every eye in the lobby on her, could sense Chloe frozen beside her, could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. She stood up slowly, her legs shaking, but her voice surprisingly steady. For a shy girl who usually avoided confrontation at all costs, the words came out with unexpected clarity. I did, Mr. Rowe. Benjamin Rowe studied her with sharp blue eyes that seemed to see everything. Up close, he was younger than she'd expected, maybe mid-40s, with graying temples and the kind of presence that filled a room. Do you know, I spent the night sleeping in my car? In the hotel parking garage? The weight of those words hit Lily like a physical blow. The image of the hotel's owner, a man worth millions curled up in his car because of her decision, made her stomach clench with guilt. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't know who you were. The booking code in your request was deactivated, and the email address wasn't from a verified domain. According to our security protocols, I had the authority to decline suspicious bookings. Something flickered across Benjamin Rowe's face, surprise, maybe, or curiosity. He stepped closer to the desk and Lily caught a faint scent of coffee and expensive cologne mixed with the wrinkled exhaustion of someone who'd spent an uncomfortable night. You kept records, Lily nodded, reaching into her personal logbook to retrieve the printed documentation. Her fingers found the pages immediately muscle memory from years of obsessive organization. She handed him the papers with hands that barely trembled. Everything's documented here. The original booking request, the system check that showed the deactivated code, and my response. Benjamin Rowe took the papers and studied them with the careful attention of someone who built his empire on details. The lobby remained silent, except for the soft ticking of an antique clock near the elevators. Lily watched his eyes move across each line, each timestamp, each carefully recorded detail. You printed this out yourself? Yes, sir. I keep backup records of unusual incidents. She paused, then added quietly, I know it's not required, but after my father. She stopped herself before the personal details spilled out. For the first time since he'd walked in, Benjamin Rowe's expression softened slightly. Ms. Bennett. Lily Bennett. Ms. Bennett, do you realize that in 3 years of working here, you're the first employee to actually check verification codes on VIP bookings? Lily blinked, not sure if this was a good thing or a terrible admission about her colleagues' habits. Around the lobby, she could see other staff members exchanging uncomfortable glances. Before Benjamin Rowe could answer, Nick Ryan appeared from the elevator bank, moving with the urgent stride of a man in crisis management mode. Nick was the assistant operations director, a 38-year-old executive who made it his business to know everything that happened in the hotel. Mr. Rowe, Nick called out, slightly breathless. I've prepared a full incident report. This was clearly a training issue. We'll have Ms. Bennett retrained on VIP protocols immediately, and I've already initiated a disciplinary review. Stop. Benjamin Rowe's single word cut through Nick's rapid-fire damage control like a blade. I want to see the complete system logs from last night. Sir, I assure you this won't happen again. Sometimes our night staff don't fully understand the nuances of the logs, Nick. Now, while Nick hurried to pull up the computer records, an elderly man approached the reception area, carrying 2 cups of coffee. Lily recognized Fred Malone immediately, the retired night manager who still stopped by most mornings to chat with the current night staff. Morning, Lily, dear, Fred said gently, offering her one of the cups. Heard there was some excitement around here. Mr. Malone? Lily accepted the coffee gratefully, her hands still shaking slightly. I think I might have made a terrible mistake. Fred studied the scene, Benjamin Rowe examining documents, Nick frantically pulling up computer files, Chloe hovering nervously nearby. His weathered face grew thoughtful, and Lily noticed something she'd never seen before, a flicker of recognition, almost like déjà vu. You know, Fred said quietly. 10 years ago, something similar happened here. Different circumstances, but similar. He paused, glancing around to make sure no one else was listening. That time, the night staff let the suspicious booking go through. "What happened?" Lily whispered. Fred's expression darkened, and he lowered his voice even further. "Biggest security breach in the hotel's history. Someone used an old booking code and a fake email to gain access to the executive floor. They weren't after money, they were after information. Guest lists, corporate communications, private details about every VIP who'd stayed here." Lily felt her coffee cup slip slightly in her hands. "They got in, walked right into the executive suite, plugged a device into the room's business center, and downloaded 3 years' worth of confidential data. Took us weeks to figure out what they'd taken and who they'd sold it to." Fred's voice carried the weight of old regret. "I was the night manager then. I approved that booking myself because the guest claimed to be a Fortune 500 CEO, and I was afraid of refusing someone important." The pieces started clicking together in Lily's mind. Mr. Malone was the booking code they used. CX7429, Fred finished quietly. "Same one that was in your suspicious request last night." Lily's blood went cold. The implication hit her like ice water. "Someone tried to use the exact same method." Fred nodded grimly. "After the breach 10 years ago, we retired that code permanently. The only way someone could know it existed would be if they had access to our old security files or—" He paused meaningfully. "Or what? Or if they were involved in the original breach and decided to try again." Across the lobby, Benjamin Rowe looked up from the computer screen where Nick was frantically scrolling through system logs. His expression had changed from irritation to something much more serious, concern, perhaps even alarm. "Nick," Benjamin's voice carried a new urgency. "Pull up the archived security reports from 2014. I want to see the original breach documentation." Fred caught Lily's arm gently. "My dear, I think you may have prevented something much worse than anyone realizes. The question now is whether this was a random attempt, or if someone's been watching this hotel for 10 years, waiting for the right moment to try again." By 10 a.m., the Carlton Edge's main conference room had been transformed into something resembling a war room. Benjamin Rowe had summoned the entire day shift management team along with the hotel's head of security and their IT specialist. Lily sat at the far end of the long mahogany table feeling like she was awaiting a verdict. Around her, 20-some employees filled every seat, their faces reflecting various degrees of curiosity, concern, and in some cases barely concealed satisfaction at watching someone else face potential termination. Being the shy girl who preferred working alone during quiet night hours, this level of scrutiny felt overwhelming. The room itself seemed to amplify every sound, the soft whir of the projector, the rustle of papers, even the quiet breathing of her colleagues. Lily could smell the lingering aroma of fresh coffee mixed with the leather of expensive office chairs and the subtle tension that filled the air. Benjamin Rowe stood at the head of the table, his laptop connected to a large display screen. He'd changed into a proper business suit, but his expression remained unreadable. Beside him, Fred Malone had been asked to stay his presence lending gravity to what was about to unfold. "Last night," he began, "our night receptionist, Ms. Bennett, received a fraudulent VIP booking request that she chose to decline. I had made my own legitimate reservation earlier that evening through proper channels, but someone else was simultaneously attempting to use our security breach for criminal purposes. Some of you believe Ms. Bennett's actions cost the hotel a significant customer. I'm here to tell you that her actions prevented our second major security breach in 10 years. He clicked to the first slide, showing 2 booking requests side by side. The contrast was stark and immediately obvious to everyone in the room. On the left, is the suspicious request that Ms. Bennett declined. On the right is my actual booking made through proper channels with current verification codes. Murmurs began to ripple through the conference room as people leaned forward to study the details. The differences were stark when displayed together. The legitimate booking showed verified email domains, current confirmation codes, and proper digital signatures. The suspicious request looked like exactly what it was, a crude attempt to copy the format without understanding the underlying security measures. The booking code CX7429 was retired specifically because it was compromised in our 2014 security breach. Benjamin continued advancing to the next slide, which showed the archived incident report. Only someone with access to our old records would know that this code had ever existed, let alone try to reuse it. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Chloe, who had been nervously twisting her rings throughout the meeting, went visibly pale. Nick Ryan, who had spent the morning preparing his case for disciplinary action against Lily, was now staring at the screen with obvious discomfort. Furthermore, Benjamin clicked to the next slide. Our IT team has traced the source email address. It was created 6 hours before the booking request was sent using a temporary email service that requires no identity verification. The IP address traces to a location approximately 40 miles outside Denver, the same general area where similar fraudulent attempts have been tracked across 3 other hotel chains in the past 6 months. The head of security, a former police detective named Martinez, leaned forward. "Sir, are you suggesting this is part of a larger operation?" "I'm not suggesting it, Martinez. I'm stating it as fact." Benjamin's voice carried the weight of someone who had built his career on being absolutely certain before making claims. Ms. Bennett didn't just prevent a single security breach, she may have helped us identify a coordinated effort to target luxury hotels throughout the region. He turned to look directly at Lily, and she felt the full attention of the room focus on her. What Ms. Bennett did was follow our written protocols exactly as they were designed to be followed. She verified information that needed to be verified, she documented her decision-making process, and she trusted her professional judgment when something felt wrong. The silence in the room was profound. Lily could hear her own heartbeat, could sense the shift in how her colleagues were looking at her, no longer as the night shift employee who had made a costly mistake, but as someone who had potentially saved them all from a catastrophic security failure. In 5 years of periodically testing our staff with irregular booking requests, Ms. Bennett is the first employee to catch and prevent a potentially fraudulent reservation. But last night wasn't one of my tests. It was a real criminal attempt that happened to coincide with my legitimate stay. Benjamin gestured toward Fred, who had been sitting quietly at the side of the room. Mr. Malone, who was our night manager during the 2014 breach, can tell you what happened when similar protocols weren't followed. Fred stood slowly, his voice carrying the weight of years and hard-earned wisdom. 10 years ago, I let a suspicious booking go through because I was afraid of insulting an important guest. The result was the theft of confidential information belonging to over 200 VIP clients, including federal judges, Fortune 500 CEOs, and government officials. The lawsuit settlements nearly destroyed this hotel's reputation and cost us millions in damages. The room absorbed this information in stunned silence. Several staff members were now looking at Lily with something approaching awe. After the meeting, Benjamin Rowe asked Lily to stay behind. When the conference room had emptied except for the 2 of them, he sat down across from her and opened a manila folder that looked like it had been carefully prepared well before this morning's events. "I want to tell you why I really conduct these security tests," he said quietly, and I want to share something about your background that might help you understand why your response last night was so significant." Lily felt her pulse quicken. She'd never told anyone at work about her father's death, or the circumstances surrounding it. The idea that her CEO knew these intimate details made her feel both vulnerable and strangely understood. "I know about David Bennett," Benjamin said gently, his voice carrying none of the authority that had filled the conference room. "I know about the financial fraud that your family experienced, and I know that you've been working nights to put yourself through college while supporting your mother." Tears sprang to Lily's eyes. "How do you—" "Because I make it my business to know the people who work for me, especially those who demonstrate exceptional character." He slid a document across the table. It looked official with multiple stamps and signatures. "This is the police report from your father's case. The scam that destroyed your family's finances started with a single fraudulent email that your father trusted, because it looked legitimate." Lily's hands shook as she recognized the familiar details, the painful timeline she'd tried so hard to forget. I haven't seen this in years. Your father was a good man who made an honest mistake." Benjamin continued, his voice growing warmer. "He trusted what appeared to be a legitimate investment opportunity because the criminals who targeted him had done their research. They knew exactly how to make their fraud look authentic." Benjamin leaned forward, his voice earnest. "What happened to your father is exactly the kind of crime that starts with small security breaches, like the one you prevented last night. Information gets stolen, identities get compromised, and innocent people get targeted by criminals who know exactly how to make fraud look legitimate." He paused, studying her face with genuine concern. "I've read the case file, Lily. Your father didn't just lose money, he lost his faith in his own judgment. The stress and shame consumed him until his heart couldn't take it anymore. That kind of destruction. It begins with security failures in places just like this hotel." The room fell quiet except for the soft hum of the air conditioning system. Through the large windows, Lily could see Denver's skyline stretching out below them, a city full of people who trusted that the systems around them would keep them safe. Your instinct to check and double-check everything, your refusal to let anything slide, even when it seems easier, that doesn't come from paranoia, Benjamin said. It comes from understanding that details matter, that protocols exist for important reasons, and that sometimes the cost of being wrong is higher than people realize. He opened another section of the folder, revealing what looked like employment records and performance reviews. "I've been watching your work for over a year, Lily. You're the only night staff member who consistently follows every protocol, who documents unusual incidents, who asks questions when something doesn't feel right. Most employees see these behaviors as excessive caution, but I see them as evidence of someone who understands the real stakes involved." "What are you saying?" Lily asked, though she was beginning to suspect where this conversation was leading. "I'm saying that Chloe and Nick are being transferred to positions where their skills will be better utilized, positions where following procedures is less critical than customer relations and operational efficiency. They're good employees, but they lack the vigilance that our security operations require." He slid another document across the table, and Lily saw her name printed at the top in bold letters. "And I'm offering you a new role." The job description took her breath away. "Night Operations Auditor. You'd be responsible for security oversight during overnight hours, not just for this hotel, but for our entire Rocky Mountain region. The position comes with a 60% salary increase, full benefits, and direct reporting to me." Lily stared at the document, hardly believing what she was reading. The salary alone was more than she'd ever imagined earning, especially at her age. You'd essentially be our overnight guardian." Benjamin continued, his voice filled with the kind of respect she'd never heard directed at her before. "Making sure that what happened to your father never happens to any of our guests, and making sure that what almost happened here last night never succeeds at any of our properties." He leaned back, giving her space to process. The position would also include a budget for additional security training, the authority to implement new protocols across all our locations, and a team of night auditors who would report directly to you. Lily felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was being offered. From a shy girl working the night shift, to avoid daytime crowds, to regional security oversight, with real authority and responsibility. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say yes," Benjamin replied with a smile that transformed his entire face. "Say yes, and help me build a hospitality company where people like your father would be safe, where protocols matter more than profit, and where paying attention to details is recognized as the valuable skill it truly is." 1 year later, Lily Bennett sat in her new office overlooking the Carlton Edge lobby, watching the night shift begin their duties. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see the lights of Denver spreading out below each one, representing someone who trusted that the places they stayed, the systems they used, and the people they dealt with would keep them safe. On her desk, next to multiple computer monitors showing security feeds from hotels across 3 states, sat a coffee cup from Fred Malone's daily visit. At 69, Fred had come out of retirement to work as Lily's assistant, bringing his decades of experience to support the security protocols she'd implemented. The transformation had been remarkable. Under Lily's oversight, the entire hotel chain had adopted new verification procedures for VIP bookings. Every suspicious request was flagged for review. Every staff member received training on recognizing potential security threats. But more importantly, the culture had changed. No longer did employees feel pressured to bend rules for supposedly important guests. Instead, they understood that following protocols protected everyone: the hotel, the legitimate guests, and innocent people who might become victims if security was compromised. Her phone rang the display showing a call from their Los Angeles property. "Night operations. This is Lily." "Ms. Bennett, this is Sandra at the Beverly Hills Carlton. I have a VIP booking request that's triggering some red flags in our system. The guest claims to be a celebrity, and my manager is pressuring me to approve it, despite some verification issues." Lily smiled. "Tell me about the red flags." "The booking code shows as expired, and the email domain doesn't match what we have on file for this person's management company. But the request is for our penthouse suite, and my manager says we can't afford to refuse a celebrity guest." "Sandra, what does your instinct tell you?" There was a pause. "That something isn't right, but I'm afraid of making a mistake." "Let me ask you something," Lily said gently. "Which mistake would be worse, disappointing one potentially legitimate guest, or allowing a criminal to access our security systems and potentially harm hundreds of future guests?" "When you put it that way. Trust your instincts, Sandra. Verify everything, document your decision, and never apologize for putting security first. Real VIP guests will respect proper protocols because they understand the value of good security." After she hung up, Lily opened her logbook, now a digital system that tracked security decisions across all their properties. The entry she made that night joined thousands of others, each one representing a moment when someone had chosen to prioritize safety over convenience. The new company motto, printed on plaques throughout all their hotels, read, "When in doubt, verify, security over speed." Below it, in smaller text, the LB protocol, named for the young night receptionist whose careful attention to detail had transformed an entire organization. As Lily finished her shift and prepared to head home, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The pain of losing her father would never completely fade, but it had been transformed into something purposeful, a mission to protect others from the kind of devastating fraud that had destroyed her family. Fred appeared in her doorway, ready to walk her to the parking garage, as he did every morning. "You know," he said, as they rode the elevator down, "your father would be proud of what you've built here." "I hope so," Lily replied. "Sometimes I wonder if he'd be surprised that his daughter found her calling working overnight security." Fred chuckled. "I think he'd be surprised by how many people sleep safer because of the work you do. That's quite a legacy for someone who started as a shy girl, working the night shift just to avoid daytime crowds." As they walked through the quiet parking garage, Lily thought about all the people who would never know how close they'd come to having their private information stolen. Their identities compromised, their trust violated. They would never know because someone had paid attention to details, followed procedures, and refused to let anything suspicious slide by unexamined. "Fred," she said, as they reached her car, "do you really think one person's attention to detail can make that much difference?" "Sifinfon." The old man smiled, the kind of smile that came from decades of watching young people discover their strength. "My dear, the difference between safety and catastrophe is often just one person who cares enough to ask the right questions at the right time." As Lily drove home through the quiet Denver streets, she thought about all the night shift workers across the country: security guards, nurses, emergency dispatchers, and yes, hotel receptionists who stood watch while others slept. They were the invisible guardians, the people who noticed when something wasn't quite right and had the courage to act on their instincts. Her father's death had taught her that trust could be dangerous when placed in the wrong hands. But her experience at the Carlton Edge had taught her something equally important. When trust was earned through consistent vigilance and genuine care for others' welfare, it became one of the most powerful forces for good in the world. The night receptionist, who had once feared making a mistake, the shy girl who chose the overnight shift specifically to avoid the bustling energy of daytime operations, had become the guardian who helped others sleep safely. And in that transformation, David Bennett's daughter had found not just a career, but a calling that honored his memory by protecting others from the pain her family had endured.